All right. Start here. Make sure my ringer's off. Make sure your phone ringer's off if it
Yep.
got it
Do
there.
not disturb.
Okay. Welcome back to Self-Center, Be Real and Heal. Okay, let me do that over. Welcome back to Self-Center, Be Real and Heal. I'm really excited today to have a very special guest join us, Mary Cabrillo. I was fortunate to get introduced to Mary about 2 years ago, right after we moved to Texas. Shortly thereafter, I decided to move forward in planning my women's event and bringing it to Texas for the first time. And I got this beautiful, chance email written to me by Mary that just, I mean, she didn't know who was on the other end. I wasn't exactly sure who Mary at, the specific Dallas business was, but we quickly connected. I want to say we talked on the phone within a few days of that email. And she was just reaching out to say, could, the business that I'm working for now support your women's event? You had found it online somewhere. Um, and that conversation that we had shortly after was just beautiful. I'll have Mary introduce herself in just a moment here, but I want to give that little piece of how we met. So, when we talked, like I said, I had just moved from Wisconsin to Texas. I had had to kind of break up with some of my nonprofit events in Wisconsin, a few that I had to leave behind that, it allowed me a chance to focus on this women's wellness event that I do each year and, passionately move forward with that one. But in that transition, I had to let go of, I had a huge fundraiser for pancreatic cancer that I had done for 8, 9 years at that point. And then we had a big community concert called Rock the Burbs, and it was a fundraiser for childhood cancer. When my second born daughter was in kindergarten, she got a letter home the first week of school, and I'll never forget that letter. But it explained that there was a little boy in their class that had a diagnosis, neuroblastoma, and that Eli would be in school sometimes, but that he might not always be there, and that the kids couldn't hug him, and that he would probably be wearing masks and might have tubes. And it was an email informing us, but then there was a separate letter that they included that we were able to read to our 5 year olds to explain to them who their classmate was. And it was beautifully written by Eli's mother. And my heart broke that day. I read the email to, or the letter to my daughter, and I just felt like I had to help. So we did this fundraiser for childhood cancer in Wisconsin for the next 2 to 3 years. I know one of the years, I think we raised $30,000 we chose two different childhood cancer related um, nonprofits, one that was directly on the research side, MAC Fund, um, Mothers Against Childhood Cancer. And then we also did, or no, not Mothers, Midwest Athletes for Childhood Cancer, sorry. And then the other foundation was Special Spaces, where they came in and did these beautiful dream bedrooms for the children that were fighting these illnesses. So, anyway, in leaving that event behind, I had a really hard time. And when I met you, and within our first few moments of, having a conversation, I thought, of course, I have this opportunity to connect with someone who's been through that same or similar heart struggle and loss. And man, I can't wait to support Mary. So maybe let's introduce yourself, Mary. Take us on the journey on the other end of that email, and let's dive into some of your story about Kelvin.
Thank you. Well, I'm so excited and so grateful to be here with you. I appreciate the time. And you're right. We connected via this email and this conversation that we had. And you just never know who we're going to meet, right? We never know who we're going to say hello to or who the universe is going to connect us to. And I kind of feel like you and I were meant to be, especially both of us were new in Texas at the time.
Mhm.
And, our angels, the universe, God just connected us in such a beautiful way. And I feel like it was meant to be because here we are, a couple of years later. So yeah, I shared with you about, my journey through cancer and my son and having not only have my own nonprofit, but also hosted these women's events. So we connected on different levels and we connected and not
So
only
many
on,
levels.
yeah, the struggle of that we all face as small business owners, but also, having a purpose and building community and trying to do it in being new to Texas. So it was wonderful connecting with you and then attending your event and seeing your vision come alive. And it was just so amazing, not only to be there and to speak at the event, But I feel like it also gave me the purpose. Like it pushed me, it gave me energy to keep doing what I was doing, because having been new to Texas, you're tired from moving, exhausted from all the things, and you find that the people that you connect with are almost in a way meant to be there along the way, like little breadcrumbs leading you along the way. And it was just
Hmm.
amazing to have met you, especially because you do fundraising, and you had done this event, like you said, to benefit pediatric oncology patients, which is where my story begins, where a big pivotal moment of my story begins, with my son Calvin. I was very young when I had him. My son Calvin was born in 2006, and as our children are, the light of our lives, and they change our lives, and a whole new version and a whole new part of us is born when they are born. And that was the case. And early on, very early on in Calvin's life, I became a single mom, and that's just we just keep going. That's just what we do. And when Calvin was 6 years old, we were doing life and going to school, and I was working full time and taking care of him. And he had a bump on his head, that just a stubborn bump on his head that wouldn't go away. And I took him to the doctor. Nobody really knew what it was. And finally, they did a biopsy, and they called me in and they said, you need to come in. We need to talk to you about, these results. So I was nervous, but I thought,
How old was
it could
he
be
then?
nothing. He was 6.
Okay.
Yeah, he was in first grade. He was actually my daughter's age right now. So,
Oh,
there's a lot of things. First grade, there's so many things that are, on the surface right now, and that's
right.
life. We learn to navigate through it. So yeah, he was 6 at the time, and I went into the doctor, and I'll never forget the moment the doctor came in, right before the doctor had come into to our room. The nurse gave Calvin some stickers, and Calvin was sitting in the chair playing with the stickers. And the doctor came in, and he just straight looked at me and he said, "Can you sit down? Do you want to sit?" And I felt like, oh, this is not like, why is he asking me to sit? And I
Mm,
just said, no, no, I'm okay here. And he started talking about these numbers, and I don't understand a lot of what he was talking about. It's just
hmm.
a bunch of lingo that I don't understand. And I just looked at him and I said, what does this mean? I don't understand. Can you just tell me what this means? And he just looked at me and then looked down at the floor and he said, "Your son has cancer."
Mm.
And I remember this moment like it was such an out of body experience.
Yeah.
I could see Calvin in my peripheral vision playing with stickers, and the whole room just moved in slow motion. And the doctor was talking, and I couldn't hear what he was saying. I
Hmm.
just remember thinking in my head, what? I, it just, you hear of things happening like this to other people,
Right.
but you never expect it's going to happen to you. And then when it does, it just hits you like a ton of bricks, and
And
you
he
don't know.
was young, so I'm sure he may have heard that word said, but not knowing what that meant. He's still probably playing, holding the stickers, not even, phased by the
Yeah,
conversation.
he had no idea. I mean, he's not phased at all by the conversation. And the doctor finished talking to me, and he said, "You need to go to an oncology doctor. We have an appointment for you, in two
Oh,
hours. You need to be there."
wow. 2 hours
So
later.
2 hours later, everything was happening just so, so fast.
Fast.
And I remember very clearly we left the room and we got into an elevator. We got into the elevator. I put on my sunglasses, and it felt like a mask. I put on my sunglasses, and tears started just pouring down my face. And I could feel Calvin putting stickers on my pants and on my shirt, and he was right next to me. And I don't remember how I got home. I don't remember driving. I don't remember doing any of
Yeah.
that. But I do remember going straight into our house, and my house always smelled like crayons and Play-Doh. And, Calvin was such a boy, dirt and shoes and bikes. And
Hmm.
I remember that smell of Play-Doh and crayons just like hitting my face when I came in. And I went straight to the bathroom, and I told Calvin, "Change your uniform. We're going to get going soon." So I went straight to the bathroom. And when I closed that door, I just sank to my knees and I started just
Mm,
bawling and just crying as quietly as I could, because I didn't want Calvin to hear me.
right.
And I remember thinking this moment, like I'm drowning, even though nothing has started. And
Right.
then I heard a knock on the door. It was Calvin, and it just kind of snapped me out of it. And he said, "Mommy, are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah." And we drove to the hospital. And I know you just mentioned that Kevin might have not known what was going on. And I remember, I can never forget this moment. We're in the hospital, and the doctor's talking to me and telling me all of these things about diagnosis and what needs to be done and giving me pamphlets and information. There's so much happening. And then she ends this conversation and she tells me and Calvin, do you guys have any questions? And I look at her and I said, I don't know, like not right
Hmm.
now. And then she looks at Calvin, who's sitting on the bed, on the table, and she said, do you have any questions for me? And I'll never forget. He said, yes. And she said, what's your question? And he said to her, am I gonna die?
Mm.
And I remember looking at him like, of course not. What kind of question is that? Like, I didn't
Wow.
say anything, but I was just so shocked by that question because he was hearing all these, lingo and medication and, all this
Right.
stuff. So that was his one question. And the doctor said, of course not. You're going to be a little sick, but you're going to be okay. And, he's like, okay. And, he just kept on going. And I'm
Mm.
never going to forget that. And I don't know why he asked that.
Yeah,
And, it's just, I'll never know.
I know.
That was late April on Mother's Day. Um, we started chemo. And shortly thereafter, the whole ordeal was just 11 months of a whole lot of chemo, radiation, treatment, and trying to figure out what was what. And in between that, doctors let me know that Calvin's chemo wasn't working and he needed a bone
Mm.
marrow transplant. And for that, you need a sibling, which Calvin didn't have. So the search started for a bone marrow transplant donor. And, we checked with our family, friends,
Hmm.
coworkers, and there was no match. And after we waited months and months, and after Calvin was getting even more sick because the treatment was not functioning with his body. Giving
Yeah.
him more chemo would be too much for his tiny body. During that time, he turned 7, and there was so much as far as not knowing what to do and how to do it. And I was working full time at the time. And I was so grateful that my job at the time allowed me to work from the hospital because Calvin was in and out for so many different things. If it was in treatment and infusion, it was an infection on his port, or it was an
Hmm.
infection on his ear. And then with an oncology patient, something is always everything. I mean,
Right.
it's just, he had to wear a mask everywhere he went. And
So were
finally,
you working at this time?
I was working. I was working.
How
I was
did you
working
do
from the
that?
office twice a week, and I was working from home from the hospital. My job at the time was able to get me my laptops to connect to the hospital,
Hmm.
and then I had laptops at home. So having to manage that,
Right.
it was definitely, you learn a lot along the way. And not only did I have to learn how to manage that, but I also had to be Calvin's advocate
Right.
because, I mean, I had to almost be a doctor in a sense. I had to learn medications and lingo and what works and what doesn't. And there's so many different things that medication causes. And even him, he had to learn this medication does this to my stomach. I have these
Hmm.
side effects. And he knew what to take, when not to take it. Like he became an expert at like what he was feeling and most likely what medication caused it. So we were so immersed in this cancer world that, to be honest, a lot of the time it felt so lonely. Like I told you, I was a single mom. So
Right.
although his dad was there, it was hard for his dad to see him in
Yeah.
that situation. And I was there, 99% of the time. I mean, I remember even one time I was so sick I couldn't be in the hospital. I did not want to leave his side. The doctors had to physically remove me because I was sick. I couldn't
Right.
be around him. And it was hard. And my family didn't know how to deal with it too. It was really hard for them too. Calvin was their first grandchild, the first nephew. And
Mm.
it was a lot for everyone at the time.
Who can you think back to the time who sat with you in the trenches during that time? Is there someone or a couple people that you could lean on that got you through that helped? I'm sure you had to kind of float around because it was, like your family, you said they were navigating it too and processing it, and it was hard on them. Dad, Kelvin's dad came in and out, but also, I mean, men processing all of this pain and loss and suffering versus women is totally different. And, mama bears are just like wired differently to just like, you had no choice. You just
Yeah.
had to keep pushing forward, work, be there for him. I mean, surely you couldn't take care of yourself much during that time. You probably had no energy or capability. What got you through? If not a person, was there some, or, what did you lean on? Was it faith? Was it,
There was this thought that everything will always get better. And call it faith, call it hope. There were many times where Calvin and I were in the hospital and we were there by ourselves, 90% of the time, it's just him and
mm-hmm,
I. And it was, there was many times where I couldn't help him. He was just in so much pain,
mm-hmm,
physical pain, and I couldn't help him. I couldn't make it better. And I would just remember thinking to myself, God, if I can only, be in his place. And I remember thinking, there has to be, we have to look forward to better time,
mm-hmm,
and holding on to the hope that it will get better was so strong, especially because I felt like even though I had my family there, my family was struggling with this, and it was
mm-hmm.
very hard for them to be there. And to be fair, they have their own lives too.
Right.
They have kids and work and life, and I can't expect them to be there all the time. And I think that was a pivotal moment in being there with Calvin so often and so long, and being the only one for so long, that I thought, I have to figure this out. I
Yeah.
remember this very specific moment where he was sleeping, and it was maybe 3, 4 in the morning. Time is just blurred when you're in the hospital
Yeah.
because they come in and check on him all the time, and medication and this and that. It was in the middle of the night. It was dark outside. And I came into his room. I was drinking coffee. I came into his room and he was asleep. And I remember just looking at him, and had no hair, no eyebrows. He was so tired and so weak. And I just laid on his bed and just put my head on his lap, and I just started sobbing. And I remember thinking, I cannot take this pain anymore. I don't know how to deal with this. And then, 30 seconds later, I felt his hand on my head,
Mm,
and he just whispered, Mommy, everything's going to be okay.
mm,
And that's where I had this feeling of like, I got him, he's got me.
mm-hmm.
Like, it's just him and I. People can come in and out and help us, and it's just him and I. And we have to be strong for each other. And it's such a big responsibility for him to have that responsibility to navigate this through me to with me,
Mm-hmm.
or help me through it. But I think we both kind of figured out we have each other. And another thing that was really helpful for me at the time, I mean, long hospital stays were hard, and we were at City of Hope at the time. And City of Hope had these long loops of cars and long loops of driveways. And, when Calvin was feeling okay and he would sit and watch a movie, or the nurses would come in with him and hang out with him, I would just put on my shoes and I would run up and down the hospital, like down the street, up and down the street, because I couldn't do anything else. I couldn't leave the hospital. I didn't want to leave the hospital, even if I wanted, even if I could. I wanted to be there in case anything happened, because, and I mean, anything can arise at any point, at any time of day or night. So I remember just lacing up my shoes and just saying, I'll be right back. 20 minutes. And the doctors and the nurse would say, go, like, we got him, you're
Right.
fine. Especially because they knew that it was just me. So
Right.
I would go and I would cry my heart out on these runs. I'm sure people down the street thought I was nuts because I would just be crying and running. But I needed to get rid of, I don't know, this pent up, you know, energy, feelings,
Right.
emotions, all the things. I didn't know that I needed to be physically, active at the time. I didn't know that this was necessary. I just was listening to my body,
Yeah.
listening to my gut feeling, and I needed to just get out and run. And I would just run 20 minutes, come back and shower and be mom again. And that was super, super, super helpful.
So I want
And
to bring some attention to that because what you
yeah,
said, and it's so true. In just knowing you 2 years and in mostly knowing you through social media, like you are someone who's so positive, and such a light in this world, but you also are not afraid to feel the feelings. And you share this all the time where you're like it was a hard day. I remember you being in like your infrared sauna and then just letting yourself have a cry session. And it sounds like you were doing that even then in the hospital where you're like, I need, it's the middle of the night. I'm I need to lay close to him and just let myself cry, or I need to get out and just run. You're really in tune with, and I think you said this not that long ago. Mary moved to Texas. We both connected there. And then you just moved back to California.
Right.
And I, remember seeing, the first week you got that bike back set out so that you could get back on the bike and ride a little bit. Making sure that you have your tools and things in place. And it sounds like at that time, they were just in any desperate way that you could walk through those feelings. But you shared something recently about like, I got to let myself feel this and feel where I'm at right now. Um, it's so good for you to not be afraid to like feel, because I've seen it from other people in different losses, where you just, some people are afraid to go there, and um, all it's going to do is build up and store up and tighten up, and at some point you have to release some of those things. So you got to give yourself a lot of credit for being someone who's not afraid to feel and can explain it. And like I said, I just want to point out that, because I know in my own, our stories are not the same. I've talked to you about my postpartum struggle. I've talked to you about my cancer diagnosis, and, how mine was through an email, and that's how I found out, and then had to tell my husband. And through all the people that I know that have lost, one of my friends who lost her husband to sarcoma. There's so much survivor's guilt. I'm sure you felt that.
Oh,
I know
yeah.
you said that, like, why couldn't
Yeah.
it be me? Why can't I change places with him?
Yeah.
Um,
It's true. I don't think that when we're going through something, we necessarily know what to do, but
mhm.
maybe there's a part of us intuitively, or maybe even that mama bear that knows something's got to give, especially because there's so much happening at the same time. And I was doing it what felt like myself. I mean, like on my own. It just, I don't know that I had the right tools. I just maybe learned to listen to my body. And I
Yes.
say I didn't have the right tools because, at least at the time, because I'm a first generation, Mexican, Hispanic. We're not born with those tools, at least not, from before. Now it's different. Now we break,
Mhm.
cycles if we are able to, right?
Yes.
But it would back then, even now, I still hear a lot of like, don't cry, it's not brave to cry, or a lot of these things. Or my mom would just say, like, we just got to keep going. But I learned along the way that maybe it's not the way it's been done. Maybe that is not going to serve me, and it's not going to
Mhm.
work for me, and that's something that I found. And when going through this, I realized not everybody is going to cope the same way, and not
Right.
everybody has the tools. And not everybody knows. I think most people would say to me, if you need something, let me know.
Yeah.
And I think we all say that, right?
Yeah.
But when you're in such a fight or flight mode,
Mhm.
you don't know what you need. You
Mm-mm.
don't even know what you need yourself. You don't even know what you need at that moment.
Right.
I remember one of my really close friends who was there, I had just met her a couple of years before we were working together. She brought me to the hospital, those little pots that you wash clothes with. I don't know what they're called.
Hmm.
The little pots
Yeah.
you throw in the washer.
Yep.
And to me, I was like, I didn't even think about the fact that I have to wash clothes in the hospital.
Mm.
And I have to. I mean, there's clothes, people live in the hospital,
Right.
there's washers, those little tiny things. So she would bring me protein bars, or she would bring me, bottled water. And it's these things that I don't ask for because I don't think that I need. But when you
Yeah.
have them, you're so grateful. Warm socks, like the simplest things, you
Right.
know? But when people ask you, let me know if you need something, we don't know what we need. You're going through survival mode. Like, you don't really know what you need,
Right.
and you just
And
go.
even like I've heard from people, like my husband lost one of his college roommates, passed away shortly after college. And I remember having a conversation with his sister, and she's like, I'm kind of one of those awkward people that just want to show up in whatever way I can, even if I don't know you well in one of those
Yeah,
moments. I want to sit with you. But she's like, even some of my closest friends have been distant because they don't know what to say. They don't
right.
know, and sometimes, I mean, so it may not have been someone close to you that got you through that. I mean, those little glimmers of hope of like those pods
Yeah.
and, things that people that showed up and brought different things. But when people say, let me know what you need, you don't even know what you need
Right.
in those moments. And so maybe it came, from different people experience or conversations at the hospital with nurses and staff. And I mean, it sounds like a lot of, you are, and you don't want to hear this because nobody wants to be told you're so strong. Like after you've been through what you've been through, but you're so strong intuitively to yourself, like into feeling what you need, knowing where you should go, what you should feel, how you should, you just kind of are in tune with where your body and mind go.
I think
Um,
that's been a muscle that has been kind of, I don't know what the word is, like
like you've been
you've
forced to flex it or what?
you've been forced, yeah, like you've been
Yeah.
forced, to kind of grow it.
Yeah.
And then you realize, I mean, at least, 10 years later, I realized what a beautiful blessing it is in
Mm,
disguise. Like I cannot say that the past, 10 years have been, incredibly, incredibly amazing, but they've been really,
no.
really beautiful. And they have been really, really hard at the same time. And all of it has been really intentional because it really is not easy. It's not something that you just kind of say, well, I'm going to do this and everything's going to
Right.
be great. It's just not how it works, especially when you continue going through, what cancer does to you and, what cancer did to myself and my son, eventually.
Right. Well, I want to keep going with more because there's more to this story.
Yeah, absolutely. There
There's
is.
what came, when you spoke at our women's event, you spoke on turning pain into purpose.
Yeah.
And we'll touch on that. I want to break up a little bit of this and just kind of do some fun stuff. We call this easy breezy questions, just some fun, lighthearted things. Um, and then we'll dive back into a little bit more of where you're going. And, I really wanted you on this month because it's September. It's Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. I want to bring, light to what you're doing and share with listeners how they can get involved in supporting the mission. So let's start with just some fun questions. Do you have, I love like right now on your social media, sometimes you're sharing a song that, makes you feel good, but you also have your daughter Cielo's playlist that I've seen you play before and you're dancing with her in the car, typically with some like,
Yeah.
I feel like Taylor Swift is in
Taylor
there
Swift,
and
yeah.
yeah.
That's a big
Um,
one.
but do you have like a song that just, if it comes on, it lights you up, it lifts you up? Not that you jump out and sing it at karaoke, but maybe it's like, your ride or die song, that song that can pull you out or pick you up or just make you smile.
Yes, I do. Titanium.
Ooh.
That song, I feel like has pulled me out, has like, and there's so many beautiful versions of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that song, I feel like every time I hear the beat, it just like, not only does it want like it pump me up, but also like, you know what? I am strong.
Yeah.
Maybe I am titanium. Like, what the song says, you pull me down, but I get up. It's that song just every time I hear it, I'm just like, yes, I got this.
I
And
love
there's
that.
actually a really beautiful version. I think Jasmine Thompson sings like a really
Oh yeah.
melancholy version of that. And during every hospital drive that I took with Calvin, I remember listening to that specific song in that from Jasmine.
Wow.
And even though those times were somber because, we have a lot going on and Calvin was sick,
Hmm.
it was still like, I got this. It's going to be okay. We're going to breathe through this. We're going to get this appointment done. We're going to get this surgery done. We're going to get this and everything, it's going to be fine. So that song, I feel like it's it pulls me like
I
it pulls
love
me
that.
through. It picks me up and it gives me the spark I need.
The family that we supported with our Wisconsin childhood cancer event. So I know she shared a song that they would always hear on the way to the hospital, and it was the Plain White Tees, Delilah.
Oh, hey there, Delilah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that
So
song.
I remember we had our biggest year of the concert. We had the Plain White Tees there. I didn't
Oh,
know that that was
wow.
the song that, often came on the radio for them. And this little Eli just loved that song. So the year
Oh,
that they performed, he was in the hospital, but we had the lead singer FaceTime him and talk to him about that
oh, that's
song.
so
And
cool.
Yeah, I remember that song hits a little different now.
I bet.
So that's cool that you've got a song. And I mean, when you said it, I'm like, you are titanium. Like you just, and I can see even just thinking about the song. Yes, that totally
Yeah.
builds me up when I hear it, but I love that for you. So I love that song. Okay. Because my name is Bree and I'm from Wisconsin. I have to ask, what's your favorite type of cheese?
I'm gonna have to let you down this one
Uh-oh.
because I'm not a big cheese
Oh
person.
no. Okay, I said this on an episode I recorded last week. I said some point someone's going to be like, I'm lactose intolerant or I don't like cheese, and it's going to break
I
my
mean,
heart a little bit.
I'm not like lactose intolerant. It's just like I'm not a big cheese person. Like, cheese is okay, but I mean, I don't have to have it, I
Okay.
mean, it's
I
it's
mean,
okay.
in
But if I were
Wisconsin,
to
we
pick
have
one,
a cheese drawer. Like there's a drawer in your fridge that is
really?
all like shredded cheese and cream cheese and string
All the
cheese and
cheeses.
like yeah.
Huh.
So I mean, I
I
still
feel
have that in
I
Texas now, but
I mean, yeah, it's true. And my daughter loves cheese. So I mean, I'm not a
okay.
big cheese
So
person, but she loves cheese.
Stella likes cheese. Okay, we're
Kiddo
good
likes
then.
cheese. Yes,
Great.
yes. Yeah.
Okay, hugs or high fives?
I would say hugs. I love hugs. I love people. I love connecting with them. I love personal touches. So I
Hmm.
would say hugs.
Okay, I love that. Um, I've always wanted to learn to blank.
I think I shared this with you before. I've always wanted to, I feel like I would be good at, or I would always wanted to be a psycho instructor.
Hmm.
I'm just like, I don't know. I feel like I can empower myself while empowering them, but then I'm just like, would I? That's what I feel like I
Yeah.
would want to do.
Mary told me this a few weeks ago, right
Yeah.
after I got my group fitness
Yes.
certification and I started teaching again. And I'm like,
Yeah.
you can do it. I just did it. You should do it. Let's do it together. I'm always like, yeah, let's
Yeah.
do it. I feel like you're going to at some point.
I hope so. I really hope so. I think that would be great.
Okay. Well, after this call, I'm going to send you the link for that certification so that you
Yes, we
can,
can hold each other. You can hold me accountable
I
now.
will. Okay. I love that. Um, last one. Finish this phrase. I love you more than blank
Chocolate.
chocolate.
Chocolate. Yeah.
I love that.
Chocolate.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure.
Well, thank you for doing some of that fun stuff. We're going to keep moving forward. I want to hear about, so you said, was Calvin's battle 11 months long?
Right.
Wow. So
Yep.
less than a year and he passed. And
Yeah. It was less than a year, and everything, I guess, got a little bit more intense or a little bit more painful after he got his bone marrow transplant.
mm,
He got his bone marrow transplant and actually in September of that year of 2013. And that was not only the sickest time of his life, but also I felt like that gave us hope. So it was both
mhm,
bitter and sweet because he was so sick and so weak and so tired, and he had so many things going on in his body. But also, that was, what we thought or what we knew at the time was the answer to help him.
right,
And ultimately, the bone marrow transplant, it did, give him more time, and he was um, cancer free after this bone marrow transplant, which was great. I mean, he was after when you get a bone marrow transplant, you can't leave the hospital for 100 days. So we're in the hospital for a really, really, really long time,
yeah,
and little by little, the bone marrow transplant takes. And at some point, they tell you your cancer is gone, and we're celebrating. And he was feeling better. His hair was starting to grow out.
mm.
So, we get these tidbits of, I'm so sorry. I think my gardener's here. Want
Oh,
me to
that's
close?
okay. I didn't see anything, so you're good.
Okay. Okay. I just hope it doesn't get too noisy.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
We'll see.
Um, okay, where was I?
So bone marrow transplant, he started to grow his hair back a bit.
Right. So his hair started growing back and he stopped using certain medications. So little by little, his counts were coming up and he was feeling better. His eyelashes came back even longer and more thicker than before. It
Hmm.
was all coming full circle. And we were thinking about going back to school, and we got registered to school and he was able to come home. So all of these things were happening not only to, let us know that he was feeling better, but he was also, walking better and all the things because he had lost so much weight and
Right.
his brittle, and there's so much things that happen with radiation, which ultimately, you know now looking back, of course, I'm so sorry.
Don't worry. We'll cut those little parts out. You're good. Oh, the puppy.
She would normally be fine, but of course, right now when the
Right.
gardener's here. Okay.
Don't
Okay.
worry.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. So, um, after his bone marrow transplant is when he was the sickest, but also ultimately it was what gave him more time with me and gave him
Mm,
more time with, being here with me, but
right.
also long story short, it's what ultimately ended up taking his life because a few months after that, while Calvin was home, um, we were home, and like I told you before, he was so good about knowing how he felt and very intuitive as far as what he was feeling and what was going on. And, we were playing outside. It was just him and I, and he came to me and he said, "My chest hurts." And, with any kind of discomfort with an oncology patient is something. So I called his doctor,
Hmm.
and his doctor said, "I'm sure it's nothing, but just bring him in." Um, bring him in, and I'm sure we'll assess him. Let me put her away because
Okay,
she
go
might
ahead.
not. Charlie, I know she wants to play. Come on, come on, come on. Okay, sorry. I hope she doesn't go nuts in
You're
there.
good.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Don't worry. I can chop all that out.
Okay.
You're good.
Um, okay, so
Okay, so we walked through that. That's ultimately what took his life. He had the chest pain.
right. So he had chest pain, and I called his doctor, and his doctor said, "Just bring him in. I'm sure it's nothing." And I did. I took him into the hospital, and I remember that day very clearly. It was March 3rd, 2014, and we walked into the hospital, and he was playing and doing well, and he wasn't feeling 100%, but he was still himself, and he wanted to color and paint. And I didn't know that that would be the last time that I took him to the hospital. None of us knew.
Mm,
I mean, there's no way of neither of us or anyone knowing
right.
really. Um, that by that night he could no longer breathe on his own, and none of us knew
By
what it
that
was
night.
that night. That night, and I'm so grateful that I took him and that he was intuitive enough to tell me something's not right.
Right.
And that was not actually the first time. There was a time before that where he said, "Mommy, something's not right in my head, in my face. I can feel it. You need to take me to the hospital now." And you know how we talk about that mama bear, like you
Hmm.
just figure it out. This specific moment, he said, "You need to take me to the hospital now." I didn't know what was happening, but I just
Hmm.
believed him. I grabbed my purse. We're at home. I grabbed my purse. Thankfully, City of Hope was not too far from where we were living at the time. I grabbed my purse and my keys. As soon as I put them in the car and I put it on drive, he started having a seizure.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it was so scary. Like he knew what was happening.
Right.
And I drove straight to the hospital, and the hospital was not even that far away. It was like 6 minutes away. But of course, it feels like an eternity.
Right.
Um, Drove to the hospital, and the children's area is on the fourth floor. And I remember thinking before I got there, there's no way I'm going to wait for this elevator. There's just no
Right.
way. It doesn't make any sense. So I remember parking the car at the valet, just throwing the door open, grabbing
Wow.
him, and running up 4 flight of stairs. And he was 6. He was probably like, I don't know, 50 pounds,
Right.
which is, for, carrying up 4 flight of stairs, 50, 60
Totally.
pounds. I don't know how I did it. And I got there and they didn't even know, they had no time even to call a code red because that's what they would normally do at the door.
Right.
I got there and they just took him in and they said, if you would not have gotten him here, he would have lacked oxygen to his body, I mean, to his brain, and something would have definitely happened. So
Wow.
it wasn't rare for him to know that something was up. So when I took him to the hospital on March 3rd, I knew, I needed to listen to him. So I did. And by that night, like I said, he could no longer breathe on his own. And
Wow.
It was, we didn't know what it was. We were in ICU. They ran tests and, different things
Mm-hmm.
and nothing, there was um, nothing that could be alarming. The cancer wasn't back. His counts were fine. There was no infection. There was nothing that was alarming, but nobody knew why he couldn't breathe. And after, we were there for a couple weeks and the doctor said, well, let's do a lung biopsy. But if we put this lung biopsy, um, then there's a chance that this tube, because it's hard for him to breathe, this tube might be hard for him to
Mm,
remove it after a while, especially because it's hard for him to breathe.
right.
But they said we definitely have to do this lung biopsy. And so we decided to do that. And is this too noisy back here?
No, you're good.
Okay. So we did the lung biopsy and we waited 4 days for the results. And sure enough, when Calvin came back, we couldn't remove the tube from his mouth because his lungs were too weak and they were getting weaker by the day and they were getting blurrier in the x-rays and we
Mm,
didn't know what it was. And after we got the results 4 days later, the doctor said it's his lungs. His lungs are completely damaged
mm,
and they were most likely damaged by all the radiation that was done
yeah.
to his little body, which was necessary to do the bone marrow transplant.
Right.
So, they said we can do a couple therapies. There's a couple experimental therapies that we've been trying, and I wanted to try everything. I just said, let's
Yeah.
try it. I want to do as much as we possibly can. So we tried two therapies, and um, he kept getting worse and worse. And can never forget the doctor came to me and she sat with me and she said, at the time, Calvin was, under sedation because he had the breathing tube in his mouth and he couldn't move. So he was heavily sedated and he was in a lot of pain, obviously, as well. So she said to me, she just looked at me and she said, Mary, we've done everything
Everything.
that we could do, and there's nothing else we can do for Calvin.
Wow.
And I remember that moment thinking, what? I don't understand because I've had all this hope and
Right.
I've had all this, I believe and God is real and, you know, God would never do this, you know, and I could not understand her words. And I said, well, what does that mean? And she said, there's nothing else we could do. And she said, you have two options and your options are to keep Calvin on the breathing tube for as long as his body will hold, which could be hours or 2 to 3 days, or you can decide to let him go. And I mean, what kind of options are that for a parent, right? Like there's really no right answer.
Right.
But I do remember thinking in that moment, immediately, I don't feel like I had to be asked. I mean, like I had to think about it too much. I remember telling her, keeping Calvin here longer is for me.
Mm,
Letting him go is for him, especially because I had seen him suffer and be in so much pain and so much discomfort and so much physical pain for so long, for an entire year. And I couldn't take that pain away. I couldn't make it better no matter what I did.
right.
So I told her, it's time. Like I can't keep him here for me. And the next day, that's exactly what happened. Um, it was March 24th, and that it was that night. Um, I just lay down next to him and they took his breathing tube out of his mouth and he took this big, long, long, beautiful breath and he opened his eyes and he looked at me and he said to me, he said, Mommy, I feel like I can't breathe. I feel like he took that long breath just to be able to say that to me. And and I said to him, it's okay. I said, it's time for you to go play. I said, go have fun. Go play baseball. Mommy will be there soon. And he closed his eyes and he held my hand really, really tight. And he took another big, long breath. And that was it.
Wow. My heart for you. hurts. But I'm so glad that through all of that, I don't know where you found it, but you wanted to fight for others.
I had to. And it was actually Calvin's idea to do that. I remember being in that hospital bed, prepping him to get ready for bed that very last night, knowing that he wasn't going to be there. And I remember telling him, Calvin, I don't know what life looks like or what life is going to look like, but I'm going to do amazing things for you. And I remember saying to him, I don't know what that means, but I know it means something. And I didn't. I had no idea what that meant, especially being in that hospital room, knowing that that was the last time I was going to put on his pajamas, knowing that that was the last time I was going to be able to hold him. I don't know how in the world I was able to form those words, knowing that I was going to let go of my son.
Right.
Maybe I just knew it, maybe intuitive. I don't know. I don't have the answer. I still don't have the answer. 10 years later, I don't have the answer. But that's where the Calvin Preston Foundation was born because of him. And it was actually his idea, even prior to that. He would say, I want to help kids. I want to help. He would go play with the kids in the hospital room. They had a playroom, and it was actually one of the most beautiful places you could be in because you parents were not allowed. It was just kids that would be there. And you would peek in and see just kids everywhere with a tube, bald heads, no lashes, no eyebrows, but they were so happy and they
Yeah.
were full of joy. Kids are just incredibly resilient and we have so much to learn from them. And he would come back from there and say, I want to get toys for these kids. This little girl wants this, but she can't leave the hospital. This little boy wants this. And it was his idea. That's where the
I
Calvin
love
Preston
it.
Foundation was born, in the middle of that darkness, of that pain, of that joy, of that light. All of it was commingled and, living together. And that's where it was all born.
So tell us about the foundation. So I know as soon as you said that, I know you collect toys, you deliver them to the hospital near you. You did it in Texas too this past year, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly what
Um,
we did. In 2015, the Calvin Preston Foundation was officially founded, and we started with just toys, just collecting toys for kids and giving them back during the holidays. And as we got funding, as we got donations, it just grew a little bit more super organic with friends and family and coworkers. And we've done it for the last 9.5 years, almost 10 years. We started just with the holidays, and we do things for the different hospitals that Calvin was in. We go back during the holidays. We did things for Mother's Day, Father's Day,
mhm.
Easter. So every year varies and every year's different. And when we have the funds, we help patients with co-payments and with food during the hospital because I remember I needed that when I was there. Um, we focus on low income patients. I think it's so important, especially to help the ones that are, most in need. And when we moved to Texas, we did the same exact thing. At
Mhm.
Medical City and Children's Hospital in Dallas, we gave back during the holidays and we collected toys, which is actually really beautiful to see. Having been new to Texas, I thought, how am I going to do this? But we collected hundreds of toys. And the hospitals were just so grateful to receive this. And I called them and I said, I don't know if you normally get a call like this, but I have a ton of toys that I would love to give to you guys, and this is what we do. And they're like, great. So they've invited us back every year, and
Oh, I love that.
we've been so lucky, and it's nothing really amazing can ever be done alone. There's no possible way I can do it by myself. As you know, it just takes village and people and you know the drive and perseverance and this purpose that just cannot die. Like it's just this fuel in me that, you know,
Well,
has
and
has to keep going.
you've been resilient in your foundation. Like you moved, and I remember talking to you and being like, "How are you navigating having your foundation here in Texas now when it was started there, and that's where all your people are and your family and your friends and um, you were resilient through those years and this past year you hosted another event in California even though you were planning it from Texas. And then, life brings you back to California now, so maybe you didn't have to go through, I've been going through a 2-year battle of moving my foundation to be housed in Texas, which is so much long work. Luckily, I found a lawyer that is like, you are just trying to do good and there's so many things stopping you. So she's trying to help me get everything done. But I mean, I know your why as to why you're continuing to do that. But talk to me about what does it look like in the future for the Calvin Preston Foundation? What do you want to keep doing with it? Where can people help?
I mean, there's so many ways to help, financial donations are always great. The more we get only means the more we give. There's no employees. It's just everything we get goes right back out to helping these families in need, which unfortunately there's so many. There's so many families that need this help, that need the support. And if you want to adopt a family, you can definitely do that for the holidays, for Christmas, for Thanksgiving. We do baskets. I mean, there's really so many different ways. Volunteering as well, especially if you are out in Texas. I'm no longer physically there and I might be able to go here and there, but having support there as well to take the toys to the hospital here in California as well.
Well, you've got
My
one
intention,
volunteer, right?
yes, my intention is to still have it in Texas, still host, or collect toys to take back to the hospitals
Right.
to have there. And it's no coincidence. Things happen, the way they're excuse me, meant to. When I moved to Texas, I rented an apartment first before I moved into a house. And when I did it online from California before I was moving. And lo and behold, we lived off of Preston, which is Calvin's middle name.
I thought of
And
that right away when
yeah,
I
and
talked to you.
it's incredible how that, it just
I
none of
have signs like that all around me.
yeah, none of that. Like it just you wonder like, wait a minute, what? And it's just beautiful signs that things are meant to happen when they're meant to happen. And
Yes.
you have to trust the timing and the course of life. When you just let go and stop trying to just fix all the things and be all the things, then life just beautifully happens with intention, of course.
Right.
So, I mean, there's so many different ways to help. And as
What's
far
your
as
website so that anyone listening can look at it?
CalvinPrestonFoundation.org is our website.
Great. Thank you for
Yeah,
sharing
so
that.
check it out. You can make a donation there, our social media as well. This is the kind, as much as we have supporters and helpers and volunteers, I try to do a lot of it myself. So,
Mhm.
bear with me as far as like posting and doing all of that. It's a one
Yep.
woman show,
I
as I
feel
mean,
you. I
as
feel
you
you.
know.
Well, and if
So
someone's listening and they are in a different state, they love someone, they know someone that's gone through a battle, they want to get more involved in bringing support to the hospitals near them. Should they just reach out via your
yes.
website, through email?
Absolutely.
Great.
That would be fantastic. We can definitely coordinate and trying to figure out how to, either collect funds or collect toys and, you can send them to your own hospital, to your own pediatric oncology hospital in the area. Absolutely.
I
The
love
more
that.
we can help, the better it is for truly everyone. So yeah, that would be amazing. As far as events, we try to have different fundraisers throughout the year.
I know
You
you're
just
going to
mentioned,
share your women's event here in just a moment, I'm sure, right?
yes, that's
But I
actually
need
what I'm
to,
getting into.
okay, I'm going to
Yes.
pause you before we do that because for each person that's on, I like to choose a word that I feel kind of encompasses the story, the conversation, the person that's on as a guest. And um, the word I chose, usually I choose a word and then I choose a quote or two that goes with it. And, I have two quotes that I was, battling between. I have to just share one. It's not even direct, it doesn't even say the word in it, but right away I thought of you. So it says, things aren't always as they appear. Sometimes what seems to be the end is really just a new beginning, like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. And I know, um, there's no way to make the loss of Calvin any, less heavy than it really is, but it did blossom. His idea became this beautiful foundation and it's continuing to help others just like him. And I bring this up only because, butterfly, I think of you always as butterflies. So maybe you could share about your butterfly
Yeah.
effect
And
event.
that butterfly also was birthed with him. All of it it's somehow tied back to him.
Yes.
He was 2.5 years old and he was chasing a butterfly once. And he looked at me and he said, when I go to heaven, I'm going to be a butterfly.
Oh,
And he was 2.5 years old. And I was like, okay. But both Calvin and Cielo are Calvin was very intuitive. And so is Cielo, very intuitive, very in tune with emotions, very, I don't even know what it is, introspective.
mhm.
So I had no idea that children were not like that. I mean, Calvin was my first child. I was just like, oh, people would say like he would say the most interesting things. He loved talking to old people. He loved gardening. He loved like,
Wow.
watering. Like it was just, but I thought, maybe that's just my kid. But looking back, you see how maybe certain things fell a certain way. And back then, I don't remember what it was, 13 when Instagram started. My
Hmm.
brother mentioned about this Instagram, and I said, oh, I'm not a big social media person, but sure, I'll try it. And I told Calvin, what do you think my name should be on Instagram? And he said, how about the mariposa? Because we love butterflies and Mary is your name. And I was like, oh,
Mm.
that's perfect. So, there goes the mariposa again, the
Right.
butterfly. And when Cielo was born in 2018, my daughter, her name is also Cielo Preston, also has her brother's middle
Oh,
name.
I love that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, her name is Preston as well. So she too is very proud of the foundation because it's like it has her name in it too.
Yes.
So when she was born, I felt like a different part of me was born. And I grew up with three boys. I have three brothers. I was really close to my dad. Calvin's family only had boys. So there was only boys in my life. And when I was pregnant with Cielo, I didn't know if I was having a boy or a girl. I didn't find out until the day she was born.
Okay.
But when she was born, I felt like a whole other part of me was born. And I felt like I needed to embrace women, embrace community, embrace motherhood,
Yeah.
embrace being a mother, helping mothers, helping women, because I felt maybe lost, maybe starting all over, maybe. I mean, when you have a baby, there's so many different
Right.
changes, and I felt like I needed something, but I didn't know what. And I remember this quote that I saw at the time was, if you see what is it? If you see a need, fill it, right?
Mm.
So I thought,
Hmm.
you know what? I'm going to have a brunch, I'm going to invite women who are moms and women who are just, working or have time, and I'm going to invite them to a brunch. And that's where the Mariposa Effect event was born.
Mm.
Cielo was like, I don't know, 6, 7 months. She was tiny, and 2018, and it's grown beautifully into this women's event that not only empowers women to do and to be and to, step into whoever they want to be and who they are,
Hmm.
but also the beauty of change that encompasses the butterfly. And I've lived it myself because I feel like I've changed in cocoon and have been reborn so many different
Right.
times over and over and over again. And the really beautiful thing about being able to change is that we get to decide how we're going to change and what we're going to, our limitations, our abilities, the people that we're going to allow in our life and the people that we're not going to allow in our life. And it's such a beautiful, I mean, metamorphosis, a butterfly, being able to change and to change with times, and we get to choose when we change. And as we know, we women wear so many different hats, and if one thing is doing great, usually another thing is not doing so great. And I don't think there's a happy medium. At least I haven't found it. There's no
Right.
one thing that just, is a magic pill for all the things and will make everything done. I think there's just an understanding that we change and time changes. And as long as we're open to the changes that life and time brings, that, we'll flow through the waves of life. And
Right.
that's what the Mariposa Effect event is. And it benefits the Calvin Preston Foundation.
I love that.
Um, and it's been beautiful to watch the women be part of it and watch the women grow that have been part of it. And I've grown along the way as well. I've gone through
Mhm.
my own changes along the way. I've experienced a divorce and I've moved and there's so many different things. And I have chosen to not necessarily take the easy way out, but to take the way that I know is going to be beneficial for me and for my daughter and for the life that, I feel I want and deserve, especially because that's what I promised my son,
Right.
a life of purpose. And that's what I feel I'm doing,
Okay,
a
well,
little
that's an
personal episode.
incredible segue. You said the word purpose. So I just want to share the word that I chose for you. And um, I this was a tough one. I reached out to a lot of people. Purpose would be easy for you. I chose the word heartwork.
Oh, wow.
And I looked it up, and it's, purpose combined with passion, whatever your heart has been charged with, and that commitment to do the work necessary. I feel like it's bigger than purpose. It's bigger than a mission or something placed on your heart. Um, like your heart is doing this for everybody that will sit in your same spot. I mean, and you're even thinking beyond that, doing your Mariposa event. It is about just women after having babies and supporting women in general. And you know, they say like this is a horrible quote to use right now, but like, it takes crazy to know crazy. Well, it also takes a dreamer to know a dreamer. And, so many people might say, oh, you've got all this stuff going on. Well, you just moved again. Take it easy. Back off those. Maybe don't have the event. Maybe pull back on. Maybe you're not doing the Christmas donations. Like there's nothing that can
Yeah.
tell you to stop. It's on your heart. It's running, your purpose and your mission and your business. And
It's
it's
bigger than being exhausted. It's bigger than being tired because it's something that helps you heal and you empower people along the way and you help people, especially those that are suffering. It's almost a no-brainer, to be
yeah,
honest.
you're right. So I mean, there's no stopping you. This is just the beginning. But you've got, two incredible missions in that women's event and also in the drive with the toys for the hospitals. And I want everybody to check out your page and your foundation and support if you can, especially in September here and as we head into the holiday months. Mary, thank you so much for sharing your heart and your story with us. And I just hope that from everything you shared, everybody can, you know, think about the way that you're in tune with yourself and the way you show up for yourself and your children. You still show up for Calvin every day in this foundation and Cielo, and you're taking care of yourself in your move and in your mission and pouring into other women. And it's beautiful. Like you are a beautiful butterfly. I hope you just continue to fly and impact this world with your light.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it's amazing to have people like you in my corner. And I really do mean that wholeheartedly because it's not often that we find people that we can wholeheartedly connect with. And I really appreciate that. So thank you. And thank you for
Agreed.
having me.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And I mean, as you guys can tell, like our conversation when we first started, it was about how can I help you at your event? And I didn't know she planned her own women's events, and I didn't know she had this story to share. That I've cried with her now. I think it's like the third time I've cried with you.
Yeah.
That you would speak at my event, that you would be there in my corner the week of my event and say, "It's okay, you're gonna make it. You can push through." And then I would do the same to you a few months
Yes.
later. Like, just be open to those chance encounters and meetings and the people you get to connect with in this world because, people like you, Mary, you only amplify my life. So thank you.
I appreciate that. And it's true. And when we're doing good, we attract good.
Yes, that is so true. All right. Thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
And now I got to figure out.